Jilted at City Hall. For the third time, my fiancé, Mark, had stood me up at the altar, or in this case, the sterile, fluorescent-lit county clerk's office. I stood there in a cream-colored silk dress, hidden beneath a wrinkled trench coat, clutching a bouquet of lilies that were already beginning to brown at the edges. The clerk, Brenda, a woman with seen-it-all eyes and a permanent scowl, leaned over her desk. She pointed a chipped fingernail at the man sitting 3 chairs away. His name was Ethan. He was in a sharp midnight blue tuxedo, staring at a velvet ring box with a look of pure, cold fury. "What a coincidence," Brenda rasped, her voice echoing in the marble hall. "That's the third time for him, too. You both wasted your day. Why don't you two just get hitched? Save me the paperwork." The air froze for a solid 10 seconds. Ethan turned his head, his gaze meeting mine. In his eyes, I saw a mirror of my own humiliation, my own exhaustion, and a sudden, what the hell, recklessness. "Okay," we said in unison. 10 minutes later, I wasn't a jilted bride. I was a wife to a complete stranger. The ink was barely dry on the certificate when my phone vibrated. It was Mark. "Babe, I'm so sorry," he started, his voice dripping with that practiced, honeyed sincerity that used to work on me. "The meeting ran over. You know how the investors are. Just head home, order some Thai, and I'll make it up to you tonight. Promise." I looked at Ethan, my husband of 3 minutes. He was leaning against the marble pillar, watching me with a calculated stillness. I didn't feel the usual surge of forgiveness. I felt nothing but a cold, sharp clarity. "I'm not going home, Mark," I said, my voice unnervingly steady. "And I'm not waiting for next time. Because there isn't one. I just got married." The silence on the other end was absolute. I could almost hear the gears grinding in his head. "Married? Chloe, stop being dramatic. You're at the clerk's office alone." I was alone, I countered, catching Ethan's slight, approving nod. "But then I met someone who actually showed up." "Don't bother coming by. I'll send for my things." I hung up before he could sputter another lie. Ethan straightened, his expensive watch catching the light. "Ready?" he asked. "No regrets," I replied. Our alliance had officially begun. Ethan wasn't just a man in a tuxedo, he was a shark in deep water. As a forensic accountant, he saw life in balance sheets, and currently, our exes were a massive liability. "If we're doing this," he said, adjusting his cufflinks, "we do it with maximum impact." We spent the next month crafting a narrative that made the local tabloids burn. I rebranded our reckless union into a high society romance, while Ethan began quietly pulling the threads of Mark's financial web. The opportunity arrived at the annual Founders Gala. Mark was there, preening in front of investors, trying to secure funding using the very business plan I had written for him. When we walked in, the room went silent. I was draped in emerald silk, my hand resting firmly on Ethan's arm. Mark's jaw practically hit the marble floor. He tried to corner me near the bar, his face flushed with jealous rage. "Chloe, what is this circus? You're making a fool of yourself with this stranger." Ethan stepped in, his presence twice as imposing as Mark's. "Actually, Mark, I've been reviewing your startup's filings. It's interesting how much company capital went into jewelry for a woman named Vanessa." The color drained from Mark's face. The power had shifted. We weren't just survivors, we were the new architects of his ruin. The legal deposition felt like a battlefield, and for the first time, I held all the ammunition. Mark sat across from us, sweating through his cheap suit, his lawyer desperately trying to argue for a goodwill settlement from my personal savings. "She was my partner," Mark blustered, his voice cracking. "I'm entitled to a share of her assets for the years I supported her career." Ethan didn't flinch. He sat beside me, a wall of cold granite. supported her. Ethan's voice was like a razor. He slid a thick blue folder across the mahogany table. Our forensic audit shows you funneled nearly $80,000 of Chloe's marketing revenue into offshore accounts and consultancy fees for your mistress. Mark's lawyer turned pale. But then came the final blow. I looked Mark straight in the eye, the man who had left me at the altar 3 times, and felt a surge of fierce, protective fire. And about the child, Mark, I said, my hand resting on my stomach. The one you told me to handle on the phone. My husband has already set up a trust. One that you will never touch, because as of 10 minutes ago, a warrant was issued for your arrest for corporate embezzlement. The room stayed silent as the realization hit. He hadn't just lost the money, he'd lost his freedom. The courthouse doors felt lighter this time. Mark had been led away in handcuffs, his reputation in tatters and his startup dissolved to pay back what he'd stolen from me. The 6-month contract Ethan and I had signed on a whim at the clerk's office was officially expiring today. We stood on the sidewalk, the city bustling around us. So, Ethan said, looking down at the gold band on his finger, the one we'd bought at a kiosk 10 minutes after meeting. The alliance is technically over. You're free, Chloe. I looked at him, really looked at him. He wasn't the stranger from the plastic chair anymore. He was the man who had sat through every morning sickness episode, the man who had fought a legal war for a child that wasn't biologically his, and the man who had actually stayed. I don't want to be free, I whispered, reaching for his hand. Not from this. A year later, our son Lucas was born, and our backyard wedding was the only one that ever mattered. Sometimes, the most absurd beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. It's not about who you start the race with, it's about who is still standing beside you at the finish line.